Everybody, welcome to the Rochester Real Estate Show. Joined today by Peter Ricardi, Anthony Butera team. What's going on, Peter?
What's going on?
Uh, you
I
know,
had
you
to,
know, waiting for spring, I guess, right?
Me too, man. At least it's getting dark later, little by little.
I love it. I love it.
I'm good with it.
We got a great topic today. I'm actually excited about it. I think it's awesome that it really relevant and hitting home for you. And I think it's going to hit home for a lot of people. And I kick myself for not listening to this episode that we're about to tape when I was a young buck. But essentially, the topic is buying your first home is a multi-unit property that you're going to live in one unit and then have an investment moving forward for as long as you want afterwards, right? I said relevant to you, personal to you, because you just did this in the last year, was it?
Yep, closed on my first multifamily end of June. So, yep,
Good for you, man.
going
Good
on.
for you. No,
Yep.
I mean, I like I said, I kick myself for not having this approach. I mean, you don't want to know what I was doing in my 20s.
Yeah.
Good on you for having this perspective and actually putting it to work. So I think what we want to talk about today is just like how'd you get on this train? How'd you actually make it happen? Let's start with like what was the mindset of wanting to do this? Talk to me a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of glad we're talking about it. I feel, a lot more people would get into it younger if they just had like the background on how to kind of get started and stuff like that.
For sure.
Essentially what got me wanting to do it is living for free, passive income. I mean, all of that essentially,
Yeah.
having my mortgage paid for monthly.
Yeah.
The thought of buying a single family for my first house wasn't really an option for me. Essentially, I kind of wanted to make some passive income.
Yeah.
you know
It makes
the
total sense. I mean, before we get too deep, tell us what you ended up doing. Like what's the setup that you have right now? Like where, what type of property, unit type that you're living in, what assuming the other units rented, like what's
Yep.
doing currently?
So I bought a 2-family house in the city. Both units were vacant. Didn't need a ton of work. Needed a little cosmetic stuff, some small upgrades to it, but mostly move-in ready for the most part. Did a little work to the downstairs unit. It's an up and down.
Okay.
So the estimated rents, I mean, they were renting this out before I got it. I mean, I think 500 an apartment were the estimated rents, and that's because they had long-term tenants, and so the rents were low on it, and
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew I could get a lot more for it. So yeah, so it's an up and down. Fixed up the downstairs unit, ended up renting it out. I'm getting it for $900 a month.
Okay.
My mortgage is a little over 1,200, about 12 times.
Okay. So you got the downstairs unit rented out for 900. You're living upstairs. You're essentially building equity for $300 a month all in.
Much. Yeah.
What were you renting before?
I wasn't lived at home till I was
Gotcha.
27.
Yeah.
Saved,
Okay.
it saved up a bunch of money, so that definitely helped me out a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at just the question that I was going to ask. What were you paying in rent? I mean, you would have been paying, $900 in rent, right?
Easily.
I mean, you're plus 600 monthly to your bottom line to do whatever you want from here with that perspective.
Sure.
I mean, you got to have a roof over your head, right? And
Sure.
for the most part, it costs money.
Yeah.
And now you're doing it for a fraction of the cost, and you're building equity, you're getting the tax advantages, right? There's all sorts of stuff that comes with this. It's just a huge advantage. I mean, good for you, man.
Yeah. Thank you. I
I mean,
appreciate
just
it.
having the investor wealth building mindset, at this age, and then actually, it's one thing to do that because that's where I guess I'll give myself credit in terms of like the thought entered my mind, when I was your age, back in my day. But I just never bucked up and actually took steps towards it. So of
Sure.
course you're in the
Yeah.
industry and that helps, but I mean, good on you, man. Good on you. Because now you've
Thanks, man.
got, tell me what your long-term outlook is, I guess. No, I shouldn't speak for you.
Sure. Yeah, so the cool thing is what I also really liked, I could always rent out my unit. I mean, I could get 900 or 1,000 easily for my unit. Then that's, pretty much profits every month that could go towards if I want to buy. I really want to just keep buying multifamilies, whether I stay in this one or keep moving in them and fixing them up and just buy a multifamily a year until I'm ready to settle down and then get myself a single family. And so whether I stay in here and just keep buying them, renting them out, or like I said, keep moving in, fixing them up and finding good tenants. But the cool thing is, like I said, the apartment I'm in, I could rent it out and it'll go towards the next one. And you can kind of just keep going with it essentially.
Well, this segue into it's somewhat of a new term in the industry, this house hacking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite that, because I think, and maybe I shouldn't say that. I mean, I think most commonly, like, you live in a place, fix it up, you buy something, needs work, live in it, fix it up, flip it, on to the next project, and doing the same. You're doing that in a way just with, potentially wanting to do that in a way with just multi-units to where, you get that income, live on the cheap, and hopefully, or not hopefully, but you may have the opportunity to where the next one or a deal down the line, like, you're actually getting paid to live there,
Sure.
right? You get
Yeah.
something where you're into it and your mortgage is less than what, the other unit's rented for. If your mortgage were 800 and you're renting the other unit for 900, you're getting paid $100 a month to live at a place and build equity.
Just because you put up the upfront money and then you get
It's a crazy concept, man. Or
it really is
crazy, but it's just like, it's when we're having this conversation out loud, or we're talking about this stuff out loud, it's a freaking no-brainer.
It really is, yeah. And a big misconception in the market, or even first-time investors, if you're going to be an owner occupant, you don't need 20% down.
Yeah.
You could get into something with 3% down.
Love it.
There's a bunch of different options. This is something you want to make happen. I mean,
so I'm assuming that's the route you went.
I ended up doing 20% down on mine.
Okay. Good for you.
More. So
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, good for you. You got equity right from the start now,
Yeah. But yeah, you don't need to. I mean, get into a house with as little as 3% down. Right. You could buy a fixer upper or buy something more move-in ready if you're not handy. I mean, there's so many different options out there if this is something that that someone wanted to get into, especially first-time investor.
Let's let's make progress with this now in terms of how it played out. So, like, what were some of the things that you had to do to get to the point, planning wise, to make this happen? Like, what, just walk me through as you're just a buyer, not an agent, like, what was the perspective around that in terms of what you had to do to make this happen for yourself?
So I think that it's different with me being in the industry. I live it and I know it. However, sure, from the perspective from, the average buyer out there, even a buyer just getting started, one thing I'd say is get connected to, an agent that is knowledgeable and can guide you and help you and answer all your questions. However, it's really just the basics, I guess, of buying any home, figuring out your budget, what you're comfortable with. Are you looking for more of a fixer upper? Can you do work? Do you need something move-in ready? Do you want a property that already has existing paying tenants? Do you want a vacant property where you can find the tenants? And the cool thing is, when you have a good agent by your side, they can help you with all that. If for any reason you do find a vacant property, you need help finding a tenant, I mean, we can help you and guide you through all that.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of first time buyers or people just getting into it are unaware of all that. So that's the cool part.
So did you have, like, was your game plan, like, I want something totally vacant to start from scratch on, or was it just kind of how it, you fell into it, so to speak?
Not necessarily. I I was lucky enough. This was the second property I wrote an offer on, and I got it. The first one I wrote an offer on, I didn't get it. That one did have an existing tenant, so I would have bought with an existing tenant. However, I'm happy with the way this one played out because, if you have an existing tenant, of course you can raise rent, but if the rents are low, essentially you got to work with them, and you might not be able to raise it as much.
Yeah.
You got to kind of work with them. So I was able to do a lot more. And you know what? I lived at home till I was 27. So to buy a vacant house and to live in it on my own for a couple months alone was pretty cool. So it worked out good for me.
Yeah.
And you can fix up the place, and as nice as you make the place, you could really ask for more in rent. So if
Sure.
you buy something vacant, don't be afraid to. I'm not saying you got to, dump so much money into it, but clean it up, make it look nice, make it a good place to live, and you should get some good rent for it.
I mean, I think, don't get me wrong. It's not to say that if you buy something that has existing tenants, that's just going to be a cluster in a bad
Sure.
scenario. But I think there is value in the way that you did it to where, like, especially with you living in it, because now there's this element of like quality of life at your home and an investment, and having that ability to really place your own tenant that's not necessarily a roommate, right? But I mean, maybe you could speak to it. I mean, I'm sure there's some connection there. And, of course, like, fair housing laws and all that, like you can't discriminate in this selection, but, it obviously, but it's just, you're able to really like get to know this person as well, and, feel comfortable with home versus kind of the unknown process of like, okay, you know, tenant seemed great when I was showing it and or seeing it in person, but who knows at the end of the day. And
Sure.
there's always risk when a sale occurs and there's tenant occupancy in terms of how that reaction goes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just not necessarily swaying to that direction, but I think that's a cool element that you executed on too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, you can buy a property with great tenants, rents are great, and all that good stuff, and you move right in and don't have to do anything. So
Right.
just a matter on what the person can and is willing to do, essentially.
So how did the rental process go for you, and and is going for you in terms of like, okay, yeah, you're a homeowner now. That's difficult enough when you start off and you get into it. um how's landlording going, so to speak?
So far, so good. Really good. I felt I picked a great tenant, and she ended up being kind of, like a friend of a friend, in the same friend groups kind of. So we kind of knew each other a
Got it.
little bit. And so that worked out good in that regard. And of course you're learning,
Yeah.
I'm in the industry, but you're continuing to learn and get better as you go with it. But just keep the basics, really give, take care of people,
Yeah.
give people good places to live. I mean, it's really simple, and everything should work out in my eyes. That's kind of how I view it. So
Yeah, and I think we talked about this recently too, in terms of just like landlording perspective, whatever you want to call it. But like, I think there is a lot of value. Don't get me wrong. I mean, all the, there's the news out there is legitimate of, what's been taking place in the last few years, with moratoriums and all that. And there's certainly just like on both sides of it, landlord and tenant, in terms of just malicious intent, for lack of a better word, right? But I think, the conversation we had and what point I want to make is like, I think, you treat people the right way, it makes it a little more difficult for malicious intent to just occur, right? And then especially carrying over, like, when the landlord's living under the same roof as you got to it's got to be a special person to just like stop paying rent or start damaging the house or start
yeah.
throwing ragers down below the landlord.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
man.
I think that, just landlording 101 is just kind of following that golden rule, right? In terms of treat others how you want to be treated. And a lot of magic happens from there.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
what were some of the surprises of this process? If with what you know now, you go to do it again, or if you're representing a buyer who's looking to do it, what'd you learn that whether it's surprising or just kind of something that was learned along this process?
Nothing really nothing really that I
Nothing
kind of
major.
learned. Something I prepared for, which, like I said, is just making sure you're comfortable and you have enough capital to. I mean, you're a landlord, so stuff goes wrong, and you're doing a house. You gotta have some. You gotta be liquid and have some capital to fix things. And so I guess that's just one big thing. You can't have like too. You can't have too much when you're buying a house. So just save up your money, and especially if you plan on being a landlord. Not saying you got to be a millionaire, but have a
Yeah.
fairly good sized cushion just to be comfortable and take care of things as they come. So that's probably
Well,
the main thing.
yeah, and I guess I'll elaborate on your response in terms of like not a whole lot of surprises or things that were learned. You're in the business and good at it, I'll add. So you're prepped for it through that. But I mean, I think there's also the element of like you're just coming at this from the investor mindset, the same way that you would represent a buyer buying a home that they're living in. Like, don't put all your financial eggs into the basket of a down payment and closing costs for a home and then be left with nothing else just for
Yeah,
life, whether it's emergency fund or like the emergency fund applied to the house. If your furnace breaks the first winter in the home and that's 3 grand or whatever it is,
yeah,
like you're gonna want heat in your house,
sure.
and it costs money to do that, right? So yeah, I just think like, and you tell me, but I assume like the way you run your business and representing buyers and sellers in the market really just kind of carried over to giving yourself the same advice, it sounds like.
Pretty much, yeah. And when you're representing buyers, especially buyers that are newer to the market, it's really just making sure they're clear on what they're getting into. So, for instance, you're buying a house. We want to make sure you're clear, know exactly if the furnace is older, might need to be replaced soon, or roof is older, or just we want to make sure there are as little as surprises as possible. I mean, it is home ownership, stuff does happen, but we
Right.
want to make sure you're at least very clear on what needs to be done, at least immediately after your purchase. So I think that's helpful versus just going in blindly and having a lot of surprises in the end. So of course we're not inspectors, but a lot of
Yeah.
times we can give ideas on ages of certain things, or a lot of times they're given to us, so um we can definitely help with that. And I know that's helpful for buyers. So
Well, I mean, again, like, I think what's hitting home for me and I love is that like you didn't have a lot of surprises. There wasn't, it's not that you didn't learn, but like, it's not,
sure.
you didn't have a lot of meaningful surprises that are like, oh man, I wish I knew this ahead of time because of how diligent you are in the business and the representation that you provide and doing what you do on a daily basis that allowed for this to happen that way. So, I have no problem like the shameless plug of like, you mentioned earlier in terms of like have an agent by your side that knows what they're doing so that aren't getting into a surprising situation, even if it only costs you $300 a month to own this home that you're living in, right? Um, so yeah, that's huge. Just because I assume, I mean, you did, you did a fair amount of work to this house to get it up and going, or wasn't too bad, or
Wasn't too bad. No, a little bit of flooring, and my unit was pretty much moving ready. Didn't have to do much. I moved
okay,
upstairs. Downstairs, like I said, it didn't need it a lot. I just wanted to do a nice facelift and make a nice
yeah,
new flooring, paint, outlet switched out, outlet covers, good
right, but
cleaning, landscaping work, a lot of just elbow grease, like just getting down into it kind of work. And I was lucky because I did a lot of it myself. I'm familiar with all that.
Yeah,
But again, not crazy big, like, work to it.
yeah. So you got a lot of stuff that you got to budget for down the road, like, furnaces and, anything else major coming through, or?
No, my roof is about 10, 11 years old. Furnaces are a little bit older, but I had them checked and inspected. They're pretty good. So my hot water tank for my unit is a little bit older, probably gonna have to go soon. The downstairs hot water tank is newer. So really not much. I mean, of course, anything can happen, but I had a
Yeah.
small roof leak like recently and I took care of it, just a couple $100. So
Okay, cool.
really not nothing too crazy.
All right, good. So, I mean, again, the whole point of like how you represent others, you did it for yourself, and you got a clear game plan. I mean, you mentioned, okay, furnace eventually, hot water heater eventually, stuff like that. Got plenty of time left on the roof. Yeah, that stuff like a roof leak like that, whether you had an inspection on the home done or not, like chances are it's
Yeah.
not going to be found. So yeah, and good on you.
Yeah,
What
man.
what else? What else would you add in terms of like, the concept of like this, not necessarily a pitch, but like there's plenty of people out there that have these thoughts and just, as I mentioned, like had the thought as well, never put it to action. Like what's some of the advice to just make it actually happen for people that are looking to do it?
Well, I want to piggyback off what you said earlier. COVID really gave tenants and landlording and all that kind of a bad rap.
Yeah,
And rightfully so, there was a lot going on, but there was a lot going on just in general in the world.
sure.
So, what I would say is, landlording may not be the easiest thing, but you can find great tenants that you get along with that pay on time, and it's a win-win relationship. I mean, absolutely. So that's one thing I'd say is don't be too scared about all the, COVID headlines and all that, the tenant stuff going on. Like I said, there, you can get into a good situation, with the right guidance essentially.
Yeah,
And we can help with all that.
right.
Um, and yeah, mostly just to highlight, you don't need to have 20% down if you're going to live there. If you're not going to live there and it's a second house, then of course, you
Yeah,
would probably need that.
yeah.
And it's I
I
feel
think that's a huge point, right? In terms of like, and run the numbers because there's options. I mean, as you said, you didn't go that route, but I mean, just to I think a lot of people think like duplex, multi-unit, investment property type of world, and like, okay, must be that type of financing that you can't take advantage of the 3.5%, and you know just making the assumption, right? And there's a world of options out there financing just in any buying situation to make sure that you get full clarity on before you move forward.
Yeah, and I'd encourage people to explore this, get connected to one of us, to a great realtor, and kind of take a look at things and see if this will be a great option for you. I think more often than not, it would be, but it can't hurt to kind of try. And who doesn't want passive income? I mean, I feel like everybody would,
Right.
So
I love it. So with it's been what, half a year. Um how long you see yourself keeping this home?
that's a great question. I'm probably gonna hold on to this home forever.
Yeah.
At least that's my goal right now. Just hold on to it
That's
forever. I want to build a big portfolio of, a lot of houses. So definitely gonna hold on to this one
I love it.
for a long time.
First
So
one's always going to mean more than the next too. So that's good, man. That's good.
yeah, it's a special one. Your first one's special to you. So
Sweat equity definition of it right here, folks. Right. So that's awesome, man. I mean,
yeah.
again, to recap, um, what was it? $1,200 a month mortgage payment. You
Yep,
got the other
900 getting in rent.
you
Yep.
got the other unit rented for 900. Did you leave any? Could it be more, or is that pretty much market rent? Or
It could have been.
okay,
I had it up for, I could have got a lot more people coming through. They're like, geez, places like this are going 12, 1300. So I wasn't really looking to squeeze every dime out of it. What was more important to me was just finding the right tenant. And
Yeah.
so to do that, I may have took a little bit less. However, to me,
Yeah.
it's worth it completely.
For sure. For sure.
But I think if I really wanted to, I could have got my mortgage payment, which is 1200.
And 1,200 includes your taxes and your insurance.
Everything. Yep. All
Love it.
said and done. Taxes, insurance.
And
Yep.
you got separate utilities, so you pay your own utility, or
Yep.
you pay your own RG&E, and the tenant pays theirs.
Exactly.
So you're 300 a month plus utilities to own and live in a home in 2023. With home prices being what they are, with interest rates being what they are. God damn. Good for you, man.
Good stuff. It's good
for you.
stuff. I'd love to make this happen for more people. So definitely
I'm glad we did this episode because it's like, all right, I mean, you remember we had the light bulb moment of like, what the hell, why aren't we talking about this? So many more people should know that this story is one that isn't just like, in these far-fetched scenarios of happening. Like, it's totally realistic. And I mean, you're in the business, so maybe that helped. I mean, I think it's cool too that it's not like you had to look for years to make it happen.
Sure. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Awesome.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, shameless plug. We have an investor seminar coming up on
There you go.
I don't know we'll kind of let everyone know the dates there. I think it's
we're talking,
you know the top of your head
on the 1st of March, so that'll be announced pretty soon. So we'll get that out there. And I mean, this can be a topic, whether it's on the first one or the next one or whatever, but just all things investing, man. I mean, just there's a world of the ability to create wealth, or at minimum a better financial situation through real estate. And this is a great story to tell in that regard, right? Like, you're not necessarily making money on this right this second, but you're living, I mean, on the cheap is generous.
Yeah.
You're living on the extreme cheap. And you got this asset now. I mean, it's all about the assets moving forward. I mean, this is, think of it this way. This is something that's always going to be part of your net worth, so long as you keep it. And you already got the 20% down in the equity. You're going to chip away at that mortgage more.
While at the same time,
property value tanking or anything.
Sure.
And you're saving more because, you would want to be living somewhere that's going to cost a lot more than $300 a month.
Sure.
On to the next from here. So good for you, man.
Yeah. And at the same time, I mean, the property's just growing in value, in the long term. So it's
absolutely. No, I mean, that's the opportunity, because that's something that's what I wish I knew when I was, back in my day, right? Like I just, only till recently did I have the mindset of like, man, what's that property worth 10 years from now? What's that property worth 20 years from now? And you're starting, you got, a big head start on most when they get into this world. So good for you, man. Good story to tell. Good info. There's huge opportunity to make this happen for those that, at whatever stage in life want to live in a multi-unit and live on the cheap and invest at the same time. I mean, huge opportunity out there, especially in our market. So good stuff. Peter Ricardi and the entire team. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.
Awesome.